Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports.
Joined by Chris Watkins and Brenden Nunes, our Kings Roundtable for the next hour. Get in your questions, 916-339-1140. Text line's always open. YouTube as well. Fellas, how you doing?
Doing well. Doing well. Can't complain. Isaiah Thomas. I'm wearing an Isaiah Thomas shirt for the audio side.
You have on an Isaiah Thomas shirt, which is fine. Chris has on a Yankee jersey, which is confusing me. You have on, it is, I was going to say a green A's hat, because last week you had on the green Giants hat. Yeah. Chris has a Sacramento hat that looks like a White Sox hat.
Chris's jersey also says Jeter on the back, which is not what the Yankees do. So I'm very curious.
Also, very unfortunate timing to wear an Isaiah Thomas shirt if you guys happen to see his tweet today.
Yeah.
Wait,
so strange.
I just saw.
It was something about farting on a plane or something.
Yeah,
he
was just like, I can't help myself. He said it as if this was like a common thing that everybody does. Like, he's just gassy on the plane, man.
Hold on.
Solidarity.
I was already wearing the shirt. I'm like, do I change? What's going on here?
My king.
No, what I just saw him talk about was how, hey, I'm coaching. I'm helping to coach.
You saw the wrong
slow grind.
You saw the wrong.
If you have any questions, just ask me.
So at 12:50 a.m.,
Isaiah
Thomas tweeted out, "Man, when I'm on these flights, I be farting so much. LOL. Especially these overseas flights. It's all bad when you sit by me." Laughing emoji.
He says it's like it's a common thing. Like when you're over the ocean and you're just more gassy.
It's a longer flight. A lot more can happen. Can I just say, no disrespect to Isaiah's out there, but it's got to be a top 5 most annoying name to type, right? There's like 15 different ways to spell it.
I
would just don't. Yeah.
Even the 2 Isaiah Thomases spell their names.
Celtics Kings have 2 A's, right? Detroit guy only has 1.
It's a tough go for me.
Yeah.
I'm really, really glad Kyle started, because I tried to search it.
Isaiah.
It's just a lot coming up.
Don't talk to me about spellings of names.
No, I wouldn't. I would never do that. But I am going to talk to you about this California Classic. I was trying to think of a name, California Classic Gate or CC Gate, whatever you want to call it, because people were very upset that the Kings aren't in it. Our own LeBron James of the station, Kyle Draper, he reported yesterday that his sources told him that they didn't want to stretch the team too thin with California Classic and obviously Vegas and Summer League, because last season they had to do a split squad. Your guys' thoughts on that? Obviously, it's a lot of people see it as the Kings' baby in a way. Your guys' thoughts? It's going to be in Sacramento next season.
Allegedly.
That's what they're saying. So your guys' initial thoughts on all of that came out yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of not wanting to split the guys up, I think, makes a lot of sense. If you think back to last year, they had an A squad and a B squad, essentially. And
do they even have enough players to split up?
Right. I think that's a great point to all this, is that you are fielding more players. And, hey, maybe you could say that gives us an extensive look at some guys, helps you shape your G League roster, things like that. But I think that you kind of want all things focused in one direction. Last year, they split up Doug Christie and I'm forgetting who else they had it. It wasn't Paul Johnson, but somebody else.
Jawad, I think.
Thank you. Jawad Williams. That I think they had run the Sacramento team. And so I think it makes sense to have everybody in one place. But, when there's a change like this, right after there was a change in management with Scott Perry taking over, you wonder how much this is his influence, and also that they don't have a first round pick. But I will say it's very easy to say that, but we expect this team to make a lot of trades, and there's no saying that they couldn't necessarily trade for a first-round pick. Not that I'm expecting it, but it's in the cards.
See what I'm telling y'all? You got to ask Brenden the right questions.
I smell BS.
I'm
going to tell you that. I just think that's like an incredibly lame excuse.
Okay.
I just don't get it. Like, I think, splitting, I understand splitting the teams last year was definitely difficult. I understand how that would be a logistical nightmare, but nobody's saying you have to have different teams. Like, you can send the same summer league squad to San Francisco. San Francisco's an hour and a half away. Right. Like, it's not. I just don't think it's that bad. I think the real answer is they didn't want to do it, and they had to come up with an excuse. Like, I think it's really as to me, it's as simple as that. And I think they weren't expecting people to be so upset here in Sacramento about them not getting 3 summer league games.
It is kind of funny because they started the event, essentially.
It's definitely ironic. Sure. It's very Kings.
Yeah, people were saying, does it cost money? Vivek doesn't want to pay. I mean, there's a lot of roasting.
I mean, there is money involved too. Like, you do have to open up the building. You got to pay the ushers. You got to pay concessions and all that stuff. Like, there is operating costs for sure. But if you're sending them to again, why I think the excuse is BS. There's no operating cost besides a bus, getting a bus and some gas to send them to San Francisco. The Miami Heat, they're not they don't have any issues flying their team cross country and then going to Vegas. Like, I just think it's an excuse, and it is what it is. I personally don't I was surprised at the amount of people who were really hurt by the California. Like, it's a fun event, but it's not as if it's circled on my calendar every. It's not. We're not having T-Pain out there every single year. If we were making it a real event every year, maybe so. But I think they've kind of been taking their foot off the gas of that. Remember last year they had the flags and the jerseys, the gradients. I remember Kyle had to break down the full what the flags
the trophy
resembled and the trophy and everything.
Are we just getting rid of the Mitch Richmond Award?
Exactly.
True.
It's cooked. It's
a long way
removed
from Lil Jon being at the debut.
I think Mitch Richmond was on the Lakers, and I don't know if he was on the Heat. I feel like he might have been on the Heat.
Yeah, the first thing is, I think that speaks to where Kings fans are right now. I keep saying tiny victories. They just wanted something to be happy about. There's just no hope right now for the Kings, and even the summer would have given you a little bit of something, even if it's Mason Jones doing his thing.
Could have been the Stockton Kings
that's
revenge tour. They just won the ring.
They get
defend your title.
You get you get rings in Vegas.
Champions
too.
Don't care about preseason.
They are still sending a team to Vegas too, and that's the thing too. It's not like it's that much of a misstep.
Can you remind us of the overlap between the California Classic and Summer League?
It's the next week. I think Cal Classic is the first week of July, July 3rd, 5th, and 8th, and then I believe the Summer League starts the following week, July 12th.
So they're not even the same week.
No, they are definitely not the same week. Other league, no. I mean, there's a Salt Lake City Summer League. There used to be an Orlando Summer League. It is a thing for teams to have a Summer League before the official Summer League. Nobody. The official Summer League is that is where you cannot miss. Nobody is missing the Vegas Summer League.
That's where Brandon Pajemski's going to do his thing.
100%. Courtside.
Well, not this. That's where he was.
I've seen him at the Valkyrie game. I feel like he's going to do the same exact thing at the Summer League.
That's right. Yeah, kind of rough stuff there, guys. So, Chris, just to be clear,
there's 2 days between the end of the Cal Classic.
Well, not
the 8th. The Cal Classic ends on the 8th. And Summer League.
So now we're worried about Summer League fatigue. We're worried about our Summer League players on back-to-backs now. No.
Yeah, we got to win a 3rd title.
Come on.
Yeah.
Just say you don't want to play. It's fine. Just say we're taking the year off. Just say everyone understands you don't have a 1st-round pick. We just think it'd be in the best interest of our organization. We hope to return to the California Classic in the years moving forward. It's that simple. But instead, whatever. I don't even think it's a lie. I just think it's not the exact reason why.
So what part is, I guess, agitating you here?
No, but I don't care. I mean,
what's the lie?
Yeah, the lie to me is that they are saying they don't. I think it is a reason is that the staff is thin and all that, and it's logistics. I just think they're overblowing that. Yeah. I think the cold hard truth is they don't see the value in it. They don't understand why. It seems like something where, frankly, Scott Perry, new here, walks in and says, "Wait, what?
Why do we do this?"
It's somebody new in the building asking the why as to why are we doing these things. And if there's not a good answer as to the why, you probably, especially when you're stretched thin already, you're not a great, you have some other things you should probably get in line first. I think it's probably we should maybe focus on XYZ instead of getting, as you guys, 20 players out here to only sign 3 of them to our actual, training camp. I just think it's not worth their time. And I think that's the reality of it. But I think that they were surprised at how many people were upset by it and felt away and felt like they had to kind of leak. I don't even know about leak things out, but there was no official, the Warriors just released the Summer League schedule, and that was it. It was their PR Twitter account released it. Yeah, there was nothing there. There was no statement from the Kings, anything. I think they expected this to just kind of, where are we in this?
Nah. Well, and the other thing is too, do you believe, and this is just our opinions here, nothing source unless Brenden, we sneak something out of Brenden again. Do you think that the idea of, hey, we're going to alternate, do you think that was the idea going into the conversation, or do you think it was the Kings saying, yeah, we're cool off that? Well, we can, the switching during the actual California Classic. Why don't we just make it clean and do this year, that year, this year, that year?
I think this is all made up. I don't think any of it, there's no legal binding anything. Yeah. They're just, besides it's Joe Lacob and Vivek or their people or whatever that are just flying by the seat. Last year they decided, let's make this into a tournament. Let's get a trophy. Right. This year, apparently, the Kings just came to the table and said, yeah, we're not doing it. I just don't think there's any official capacity behind it. And it is what it is. Again, I like it for the T-Pain concerts, for the other things like that. But, the Summer League is something that the other people are excited about.
Kyle, let's make sure we come back with some T-Pain music on a Throwback Thursday. You look at the other teams involved, guys, just blue bloods. Blue bloods and true culture. Yeah. Organizations with strong culture. You got the Lakers, okay? The bluest of the blue bloods. Yeah. You got the Warriors, blues literally in their jersey. You got the Spurs,
gold-blooded,
they're gold-blooded though. Yeah. You got the Spurs, and De'Aaron Fox. He might be. We know
Stephon Castle's not going to be there.
Oh right? No. Yeah. He's going to be bubble wrapped.
Yeah. Dylan Harper though.
And then you get Heat culture with Khalil Ware, who will dunk. Okay. This is what we're dealing with.
That's well done.
The Kings do not deserve to be there. That's how I see it. They don't deserve to
it. Alternated in the last few years, right? Were the Lakers there last year? Last year was the Hornets and the Spurs.
Spurs were there.
The Hornets.
Were the Heat
I think maybe
not there?
The Heat
maybe the Heat were the ones that were
not.
It's
Jean Salon. That's what we're talking about.
That's right,
guys.
Absolutely.
Premier talent.
Yeah.
And the Kings said, that's too much for us right now. Yeah. We got to focus on where DeMar DeRozan is headed.
But we don't even get to see Bronny either.
No Bronny. No, why would Bronny? No, Bronny getting time. You don't think Bronny getting time on a 3 seed? Why would Bronny be playing with these bums?
Is he?
Bronny not playing with these bums. On the other side, let's discuss DeMar DeRozan and the smoke to the fire of where he's headed next. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you
on Sports app?
Chris Watkins, Brenden Nunes joining us until 1 o'clock, talking Kings and the Kings Roundtable, of course. Guys, let's move on to some of this DeMar DeRozan smoke. Brett Siegel was on the show breaking down Siegel's scoops, which he dropped last week. DeMar DeRozan and a connection to the Miami Heat, okay, as well as Drew Holiday and the connection to the Kings, as well as other teams. I saw the Clippers in the mix for Drew Holiday as well. Let's start with DeMar DeRozan. Is this, I guess, more action and more of a rumor mill than you thought the Kings would have? More of a market for DeMar DeRozan than you initially thought DeMar DeRozan would have going into the offseason?
I mean, I don't think it's surprising to see there be interest around the league. I think that we even just saw it when DeMar just had his free agency, but the reality of that also was that he went a decent ways into free agency and, seemingly kind of ended up settling on the Kings, like he's mentioned, and he has mentioned how he got talked into it, which in my mind means that you probably didn't think this was the greatest idea initially,
right,
before diving into it at least, and that it was a later step in the process. So I think that teams will be interested. It's just still very TBD on what that means. Like, to what extent? What can the Kings get in a return? Are they going to have to combine a first-round pick with the DeMar contract if they really want to try to get something of value? So it's not super surprising to me that the teams would be interested after this super top end of KD, Giannis, and there's probably going to be 3 or 4 more guys that are above DeRozan's tier. If somebody wants to make a marginal improvement for a cheaper deal or package that you are sending out, then DeMar might be a guy that interests you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm surprised, just because I think we all knew that he was going to be a name that's definitely on the block. I'm actually more so curious, like, what do you guys think in terms of if it's in the King, like if you're on the King side of things, is it better to get DeMar off the market first instead of waiting to see what KD and Giannis go for potentially? And that could, because Kevin Durant is a 36-year-old like forward who's had lower leg injury. Like, who knows if Kevin Durant's going to go for, multiple first round picks or anything like that.
Too.
Like, you could end up setting your market below what you actually feel like you could have got. The classic Vlade had a better deal 3 days ago. Like, it might be good for the Kings to kind of get in front of these rumors and say, look, DeMar is open. You can have your team set as soon as July, absolutely. If you want him, he is there. And maybe it is in the Kings' best. I don't know. Like, is it in the Kings' best interest to get that deal done early, or should they maybe wait to see how many people strike out? And who knows, maybe you'll have even more suitors than before.
Yeah. And Chris Bierman brought up the Rockets. Okay. He brought up the Rockets, which I thought, again, hey, we're not going to cash out on Devin Booker. We're going to see what Jalen Green is all about. I think that's more about Devin Booker's price tag. Yesterday, Brett Siegel brought up the Bucks, which we had some fun with how the Kings could pull that off and what they would get in return. I think it's a great question, Chris. It comes down to what you think Kevin Durant is going to be worth. Are the rumors better than what he'll actually go for?
Yeah.
Is essentially what you're asking. And I think you might be onto something. Everything gets leaked so much. I wouldn't be against it if I'm Scott Perry. If I'm not mistaken, was it the California Classic or was it Vegas when DeMar pulled up?
That was Cal Classic.
That was the California Classic. So we're not that far away. And this had been a similar situation to the Bulls in that everyone kind of knew that DeMar was on the way out. So I'm sure underground conversations were being had. You might be onto something. I think the initial thought is, well, let's see them set the market and then there might be more teams available.
Yeah. But
if KD doesn't go for the Godfather offer that we think, and let's say Giannis stays, then that could affect some things. Now that would include the Bucks as far as maybe wanting DeMar DeRozan. But yeah, if they don't go for some crazy offers, and what if Lauri Markkanen he gets back on the market because it doesn't make sense for Danny Ainge and he just takes his medicine. Now you're thinking, all right, well, if Lauri and KD went for this, you're going to take Kyle Kuzma, you're going to like it.
Yeah, no, and I heard Brett yesterday kind of mention what he expects the timeline to be for Sabonis. How, for lack of a better term, how terrible would it be for the Kings to go into next season and say, well, we were waiting for DeMar DeRozan trade, but either we didn't like the offers or straight up nothing material. Like nobody really wanted him. So yeah, I think the earlier you can kind of set that in motion, instead of the Kings waiting to figure out what their team's going to look like, they can be proactive in saying, we know we don't want this piece. Let's get this piece off so we can continue to build throughout the offseason instead of, well, like, I don't know if I really want to pursue X point guard because who knows what we were planning to, in the Miami negotiations, get Terry Rozier back here, Allen's best friend. And so, I think that it might be in the Kings' best interest and the opposite is what we just saw with De'Aaron Fox, right? Is that you get the deal done early and who knows, maybe Kevin Durant stays in Phoenix and then the Biederman situation comes up where now DeMar is the hot item on the market, right? Is now everyone's asking for his services and all of a sudden his offer, his value is higher than you ever thought it would be. So it's a really complicated situation that they have to kind of figure out. I mean, they have to attack it however they see the market shaking out.
Yeah, it's just one of those. I mean, I think the other aspect of it is that it takes two to tango, right? Like some of these other teams might be viewing DeMar as a fallback. And it's like, well, we don't want to come to the table about real DeMar conversations until we know what's going to happen with KD. We know what's going to happen with Giannis. So I think it's one of those like easier said than done. Yeah. Two-way street is a good way to put it for sure. Because, I think you can also make an argument that maybe a team will be desperate at the deadline. Maybe you could get a better deal at the deadline, but then what are you doing to the first half of your season in the year that you're coming in as a new general manager, trying to make an identity for this team? It feels like, they have to make decent change going into the year rather than in the middle of it.
And I think at this point, I would assume Scott Perry kind of knows what the market is going to be. And now you get PTSD from Imani McNair where it becomes, and this was, to get the John Collins piece or whatever, where it's, oh, well, we wanted another second rounder or something kind of insignificant and you miss out on a deal. Or is that second rounder worth not just being done and moving forward? That Kyle Kuzma in the second round, whatever the case is, if you're moving on from DeMar, the balance of not being too greedy, but getting obviously the best value. Real quick before we get to the other side here, guys, any chance, right? Because they said they need a point guard. We just were looking at Keith Smith's breakdown of the point guards. Any chance they just go get Dennis Schroeder and say, hey, we didn't have a point guard, or that's what we were missing in Chicago. Let's go get Dennis Schroeder, DeMar, Zach LaVine. Let's see what you can do. Any chance that DeMar stays in Sacramento?
I think there's a chance. I think it's very unlikely, though. I think there's like a 90% chance that they end up moving off of him. I think it's what there is. Unfortunately, DeMar is still a valuable player, but I do think there's an aspect of addition by subtraction with a little bit of this. Like Keegan needs to spread his wings. You need to be able to fully run the ball through Zach and Domas and some of these other guys. So I would be surprised if DeMar was still here, and I would also laugh if Dennis Schroeder was their point guard going into next year.
Okay, well,
You've been listening to too much of the drive.
me?
That's Kyle Draper's guy.
No, how many guys he got? What, John Collins?
That is a great question.
Give me John
That's
Collins.
a great question.
Give me Dennis Schroeder, and let's go get a ring. Let's go get a parade. I'll get the balloons. On the other side, there is a guard on the Kings that is starting to pop up very often in trade rumors. How open should the Kings be to moving Ellis Island? Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
Live and local
It's Allen Stiles.
on Sactown Sports.
Chris Watkins, Brenden Nunes, Kings Roundtable, Frankie Cardicelli, we think could be back next week. He'll be here when he's here. I don't know what's going on.
Busy guy.
Busy guy. Yes, we do. When he's here, he does. And we are breaking down all things Kings. Get your questions in here, and we will get to them. Guys, I have a couple questions, okay? The first one is that I saw a report that Devin Carter may or may not have played in the California Classic. Did you hear about that? Just from I don't know.
If they would have
participated.
Yes,
okay. Yes.
I did not hear that. I don't know how one could have deduced that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's questions about whether or not Devin would participate, and I definitely had the thought that it would make sense if they only played him in the Cal Classic, because I feel like they've done that with second-year guys in the past. But
so he wouldn't have played in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just me like guessing based on how they've done things previously. But again, this is new management, and obviously they didn't quite see the value in Cal Classic in the first place. So I don't think I'm expecting Devin out there. I don't know.
I feel like I would expect him physically, but I don't think he would play,
like Davion did that year too. He played.
Keon did it.
I don't know if he played in Cal Classic, but yeah, they usually do have one guy sort of
just
mentoring,
right? Yeah, exactly. Like
Jay
Isaac
Crowder
Jones will
of the
probably
Summer
be out there,
League
right? Like Isaac Jones will probably
that.
be like the star of the Summer League team.
That would make sense.
Untouchable, according to some Kings
Should be.
fans,
Some,
by the way. Speaking of untouchable, should this player be untouchable? So Keith Smith had Keon Ellis ranked in his kind of guards breakdown on Spot Track. Also, we read off a Bleacher Report article that had three dream trade targets for each NBA team. Keon popped up as a dream trade target on about 3 or 4 different teams. And we know about the team control and how if you decline, they will have an opportunity to sign him for a bigger contract at the end of the season. If you accept, you get the better deal now, and so on and so forth. Is he somebody that either we should be on the lookout for the Kings to maybe try to sneak some value out of, or do you think that that's somebody that, hey, we already don't have enough young talent, let's lock him up and throw away the key?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he is a high impact player now, and that makes it an interesting scenario for the Kings where they need a guy like him. If you get rid of Keon Ellis, it's the same thing we've talked about with Keegan and HB and different guys over the past. Like, you get rid of that guy, you need another version of him. But I don't think he has Alex Caruso value. But if there's an Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey sort of trade out there where you can get young and some sort of upside, then sure, you probably consider it. But I think that he's a very important player on this current Kings team. And again, you get rid of him, you have to find a new version of him. So I'd imagine that they really try and get a deal done rather than letting him reach restricted free agency. But, you know, there's only so many players as you go down the list of like, okay, who has notable value on this team if you're trying to make a deal. So I think it would take a big splash for Keon to be included in a deal, as funny as that sounds, but he's not somebody that should be untouchable.
Yeah, I would say he's probably like sweetener is probably not the right term for it, but it's the best I got of like, you know, if you attach him with the DeMar DeRozan because of how his contract is too, it's like you're not going to, it's kind of why in a way like Isaac Jones is a little untouchable because if you're going to trade that contract, I don't know if you're going to get somebody of equal value who's making that money. You kind of throw Keon into a deal, let's say, I don't know, just for, again, lack of a better deal. Like, let's say DeRozan to Miami. If the Kings really want to get, we'll say Khalil Ware. I was going to say Tyler Hero just to shoot even higher, but it's something where look, you can't get that. You're not going to get a DeMar DeRozan for Tyler Hero deal straight up. If we can maybe make it DeRozan and what I think Keon's contract's maybe $2 million, that makes it a little bit more palatable for that team. And maybe, you know, even easier to say like Keon's just the equivalent of maybe like a first round draft pick, like a mid-late lottery draft pick. I think if we're talking value, and that's where, yeah, like you're saying, if you could find a Caruso for Josh Giddey type deal, that might be the only way you see a 1-for-1 swap. But I think the problem is Keon is just so much better than anyone you're going to get at that dollar figure. And Keon's young too. It's not like, you know, Alex Caruso, I think is 28, 29. Like Keon is still 24, 25. Like you're still, he is the young player that you would ideally be trading for. So I can't really see him being moved, but if he is moved in a bigger deal, that should tell you that the Kings probably really like who they're bringing back. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, using that like sweetener term, which I agree with you. I think he's probably like a tier above that, whatever it may be, like a really strong sugar or something. I don't know what a stronger sweetener is, but like who has more value in a deal, Devin Carter or Keon Ellis?
I literally was about to ask that.
I'd say Keon. I mean, you've seen him play, right?
It's probably Keon, but Devin has the team control. It's probably team dependent. It's like if a team loved Devin at the draft, then maybe he has more value. But I think, you know, if you're trying to get in the Trae Young sweepstakes or Zion or KD, that like how much would Phoenix love Keon Ellis as part of a deal? Right. You know, he's a player that they would love to have on their team, and shoot, Devin probably as well. Like that team controlled contracts are valuable to those teams. So yeah, I mean, I think Chris is spot on. To me, it would have to be a piece to a bigger deal.
Yeah, and the Devin Carter situation is interesting. I think everybody, it's funny how certain players gain value and lose value. Keon being somebody that you did not look at coming into the Kings organization as a guy, and that famous tweet, who cares, right? It was I don't know if it was Kings PR, or might have even been Woj or Shams or somebody, and a Kings fan responds and says, who cares? He's never going to see the court. And somebody, I think Drew, retweets it every time Keon does something. You look at Keon in a certain way because you didn't expect to get anything from him, not like this. You look at Devin Carter in a certain way because, and he wasn't even a top 5 pick, but he goes in the first round. And we look at those two guys completely differently, and their values are completely different based on expectations. The Devin Carter piece of it, and, you know, we'll get a text every now and then because we spend so much time talking about point guards. Well, Allen, what about Keon and Devin? Can either of them be point guards? And, you know, I'm on record, and I'll just get your guys' thoughts on it. I guess I'm more confident that Keon could get to a point where, and I always liken it to shortstop and second base. I think Keon could play some shortstop, but he's a second baseman. Yeah. Malik cannot play shortstop. We've decided he maybe for a hitter here or there. Right. And I'm be honest, and Chris, me and you were doing these breakdowns about the draft last season, and we never broke down Devin Carter because we didn't think the Kings would go in that direction. I believe
you said, what are we doing here?
A common term on this show.
You said he's 6'4". What are we doing here? And then we didn't talk about him. I'm sorry.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
It's a shared opinion.
I don't
Look where that got us.
I don't think that Devin Carter can play shortstop. I don't see a point guard there, brother.
I hope somebody's tuning in right now to hear that. Well, this guy doesn't know what he's saying.
Did you see that? And Clutch Points, friend of the show. Did you see the graphic? They're famous for their crazy graphics.
Yes.
Did you see the one with Tyrese Halliburton? No,
I've seen a lot of crazy graphics with Tyrese Halliburton.
They like converted the yards for like Drew Brees.
Oh, I did see this.
And they said no interceptions because Tyrese Halliburton had no turnovers. That was a fun one, I guess. But
fun.
If you're just now tuning in, I'm likening shortstop to point guard. And to answer everyone's question, I don't see Devin Carter as a point guard. Do either of you?
No. I think that actually Malik is more of a point guard than anybody else on this roster.
Even Keon.
Still, for sure. I think it's no questions asked. I think that Keon doesn't have the ball handling right now.
Yeah.
Like if he gets pressed bringing the ball up the floor, he's going to have to turn 3-4 times before he gets the ball up the floor, and maybe that's something that can continue to develop as he's still pretty young, but I don't think that we've seen the most encouraging flashes to make you think that that is right around the corner or anything like that. Malik has the handle. It's not like super manipulative reads or anything, but he can run a pick and roll and hit that pocket pass. Obviously, we've seen that a bunch with Domas. I don't think you're seeing that from Devin. He was more of like a combo guard, sort of primary initiator, but mainly for himself, making pretty basic reads during his time in college. I guess really your answer is that Domas is supposed to be the point guard of this team, but you need more than that. You need it from the perimeter. I think one of the big differences between New York and Indiana is Indiana has so many guys that can initiate. It's not just Tyrese, it's Andrew Nembhard, it's TJ McConnell, it's Pascal Siakam. And then New York has Jalen Brunson. And after that, it's like, okay, who do we give the ball to on the perimeter?
Cat.
Yeah.
Deuce McBride. Josh Hartford back people down from the half court line.
Campaign.
Yeah.
Yep. That's who it is. I said Alfred Payton. Huh?
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Is Alfred Payton still around?
He was. He had 20 assists and then
cut his hair,
Pelicans?
I know.
Yeah, he got 20 assists and then got cut. That's the last I heard.
Tough. That's really
him
tough.
not being able to see because of his hair that one time is
tough.
just still an all-time moment. Yeah, it's all-time moment.
Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. I think I would say, because you and I used to go back and forth on like what even is a point guard in today's NBA anyway, like what is the exact definition. So I guess I would say Devin Carter can play point guard, but I would say it more in the sense of he's more in the mold of like a Chris Dunn or like a Marcus Smart, where it's like Chris Dunn has James Harden next to him. Like Marcus Smart had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown bringing the ball down. So I think it's more just if Devin Carter is going to be a starter, let's just say we have the team that we have now, it would have to be him playing next to Zach LaVine. And like Zach LaVine almost plays more of this initiator. Devin can have the ball in his hands for sure, but it's not like you're, setting up your offense. Devin's, running fist and everyone's moving around. I think it's just going to be a different kind of point guard. But I guess if you're doing the traditional sense of like slotting guys in, I guess he can play point guard. It's just not gonna be the initiator, like, which is again where it's like, where are we gonna get with our basketball terms here?
I will say whatever like point guard they get, like I would just say open your mind up a little bit that it doesn't have to be a small player. Like you guys have been talking about RJ Barrett. I don't think that he's necessarily the level of playmaker that you need, but like Josh Giddey, that's a point guard. He's not a guard necessarily, right? When you're thinking size. I don't have the greatest other examples off the top of my head. That's insane. But like if we're going super top end, obviously Giannis is a point guard, like there are other guys. You could say Domas a little bit, but I think you do need somebody that can attack the paint and sort of just suck a defense in essentially from the exterior and then moving into the paint. And the Kings don't really have that, but it could be a guy with more size than just the traditional, 6'4" and under guys that everybody looks at.
A creator, ball handler. And, people kept bringing up when the T-Wolves were good last week because they played a Warriors team without Steph. Everybody was talking about Julius Randle and why can't Domas do this? And I just had to ask, do you watch basketball? Because to me, watching Julius Randle run the transition break, that's the difference between what he does and not, shooting the basketball, sure, but between him and Domas is not running a transition like Julius Randle. Yeah. You can add a Julius Randle if you want on the Kings. We're going to talk about that next week. And as far as a ball handler, but when people were saying, well, he's our point center. Yeah, but they're different versions of point forwards and point centers. Domas kind of sits there on the block and he's going to wait and kind of sift out the defense. He ain't running 3-man weaves. He's not doing that.
Yeah, no, and I mean Julius Randle, they're different level athletes too. Like Julius, we joke about Sabonis's hops all the time. Like he's not really a superstar athlete in that sense. And Julius Randle's also like he's one of the famous. This guy's actually like 6'7", you know, like Sabonis is 6'11". I think that's also a big difference too in just terms of mobility as well.
Go ahead.
I think Domas can run the break a little bit better than what you might be giving him credit for, but I think it's in the half court.
Pull the tape.
Like,
as a ball handler, I would say he runs the floor really well. Maybe if you're talking more as like a trailer or like somebody who's running ahead of the break, I don't see him doing that a ton. But he can
he's not dropping dimes, bro.
He's not in the traditional
transition.
sense,
I think he is, but I think the other aspect is that you want your big to like, hey, if a guard gets a rebound, then maybe the big doesn't have to be the one to come back and get it. Like, just get down the floor as quick as possible.
Sure, I hear you. Pull the tape. When we return, we're still talking about offense here, but I want to ask the fellas, what should we expect from the Kings offense this upcoming season? Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
You're home for Kings talk and so much more.
Live and local.
Allen Stiles on Sactown Sports.
Brenden Nunes, Chris Watkins. One more segment with the guys, taking us up to 1 p.m. Then we take you up to 2 p.m. And there's been a lot of talk about free agents, trades, and we know it's all part of the offseason, and it's the offseason buzz and the offseason rumor mill. But I wanted to get a little bit mind the game pod here, guys. And now Chris is saying I'm listening, because you bring on Bobby Jackson. You bring on Mike Woodson. Obviously, Doug Christie is no longer the interim head coach. He is the head coach. Not really sure. With the last coaching regime, it was very clear defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. Mike Brown was the defensive coordinator with the Warriors. How do you think that the breakdown of the coaches will be released? Do you think they're still looking to add? And the final question I will add on to that is, how do you think the Kings offense will look under Doug Christie compared to under Mike Brown?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we don't usually get, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like an official announcement of, hey, this guy is the offensive coordinator, this guy's defensive, maybe Leandro Barbosa is assigned to Trey Lyles this year. Like, we kind of just pick up on it as it goes along. And I'd imagine that, while there is an offensive and defensive coordinator, it usually feels like the head coach is one of them. And then there's like the, tertiary guys after that, I guess. But it feels like Doug is more of a defensive guy. Sure. And then Mike Woodson in the league is going to be pretty much the offensive coordinator for the team, with, just kind of assuming with his resume and what he typically focuses on, how Indiana ran as a team during his time there. So that's kind of how I assume that would go down. And I think that there's going to be more guys than what we know already. Like, there might already be, and they just haven't been announced for all we know. But these coaching staffs are ginormous. There's going to be there's probably close to 10 guys just on the bench. And then it goes beyond that, obviously. Like, they still have to figure out their Stockton staff. Like, we don't know for sure that Quentin Crawford's going to be back. And what is that future going to look like there? Who's going to be around him? So I think that there's definitely still a lot TBD to be figured out with all that. But I would imagine that Mike Woodson, again, just given his history, rather than having been told this, would be more of the offensive coordinator, while Doug is clearly a defensive focused guy. Not that Doug's not doing everything, obviously, as the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, usually I think we get the official announcements of just like them being hired. Like, the team will usually release I remember specifically like Jordy and Luke Lauk's graphics getting made by the Kings. So like there will be official announcements in that capacity, but kind of like Brendan said, I think it's more so something that we pick up on, or Doug will just straight up say in one of his first press conferences. But in terms of what the offense is going to look like, I really don't have much of an idea. I think it kind of ties into, we don't really know exactly what personnel is going to be out there.
Right. You
You would assume if Sabonis is still going to be on this roster, he's going to be heavily involved. I think Sabonis has actually himself come out and say like he prefers the dribble handoff game as opposed to, the traditional pick and roll setting screens. Like When Zach got here, he kind of talked about how that was an adjustment for him, talking about how Sabonis liked to run more handoffs than traditional pick and roll. So I would assume it's probably going to be based mainly around getting those two guys as active offensively as they can, getting Sabonis and getting Zach LaVine the ball wherever they like it. Because I feel like, again, I think I've said this multiple times, but like I think the roster is going to be fairly defensively minded next year. Mm-hmm. And it might be a little bit more like the Knicks than what we previously have seen, where it is a little bit more like these are our offensive guys, and if they don't have it going, we're kind of screwed on that end, but we hope to win defensively. That would be my guess, just based off of how Scott has kind of talked about how he wants to have the team be built. And then obviously we know Doug's identity. It just, to me, feels like sharing the ball and defense are going to be the two main staples of the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the Domas aspect almost feels under-discussed this offseason, and we're still very early in the offseason, but, it was just reported like he's wants to see where this is going. And based on everything as Sam said and Sam Amick and all the other conversations that we've all sort of had, like, I think that he wants things to run through him a little bit, like Chris is kind of saying. And so you'd imagine if he's on the roster that, and he's happy to come back, that's the direction that you're going in a little bit. That doesn't mean that you don't need a point guard. He's the one, that obviously is this dribble handoff guy, but he's the one that came out and said, obviously we need a point guard on this team. Like, he knows that is still obviously something that you need even when you're running that sort of offense through your big. So I think that's what it'll be catered to. Like, there's not that much that needs to change with the offense in my mind. Like, you do need a little bit more of an identity. I think that the DeRozan piece to all of this is kind of what screwed everything in that. And that's not DeMar's fault. It's just stylistically, he was the clear difference between everybody else trying to play with pace. And to be fair, the pace had a lot to do with Domas, but even more so De'Aaron Fox. It was constantly like, well, we think we have the fastest guy in the league, so that's why we're going to run like crazy. And so maybe it's not the same level of pace that we're going to be talking about, but whatever your offensive identity is, if Domas is still on this team, I would assume that means because you're running through him a good amount.
How many other teams out there, just for the listeners, when you hear DHO, and Kings are just obsessed over this DHO and the Sabonis kind of system, if you will, how many other teams off the top of your head are as DHO, for lack of a better term, dependent as the Sacramento Kings? I
mean, definitely Denver. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any team as dependent, for what it's worth, when the Kings are playing fully. Maybe last year is a little bit different, but like year prior, I want to say that they were the top DHO team. After that, it's such a unique play style. I mean, there's another. I think that Miami runs it a decent amount with Bam. Mm-hmm. There's really not that many around the league. There's another one that I had that I lost in the middle of saying this, but there's not many. Şengün, that's a good one for sure. Houston is definitely a good one. Yeah, there's a couple, but it is definitely more of a rare thing. I would say, because just the extent of it. I think most teams do it on every single game, essentially, but it's how often. Yeah. Are we doing it guard to guard DHO, or are we constantly just like, hey, get the ball to our big on the elbow, and then everything runs through these DHOs, I think is the difference for the Kings and maybe Denver and Houston and those teams, compared to other teams will sprinkle it in throughout their offense.
But is it the full-blown return? Because I used to joke and call it the ring around the rosy offense. Is it the full-blown return of that?
I doubt it, but
because Doug came out and said, I don't want to get into actions for no reason. That's what Doug said when he first kind of took the gig.
Yeah. Which I think is fair. And I think that's where you saw like the ball reversals that were a staple under Mike Brown. I think that still makes sense to be a staple, but don't just go to the other side of the floor just because, hey, this is a thing that we're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. In the ring around the rosy offense, I get why you say that, but they broke the offensive record. Yeah. And I will say Indiana, one of the interesting aspects to me of Indiana being so successful is that, I think a common theory was that like, hey, pace doesn't really work in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And sure, their half court offense is really, really good too. And that's an important part of this, but they're finding ways to play fast, and they're about to go to the finals.
Yeah. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me either if it's just more, we still see the handoffs, but just more pick and roll in general. Like the Kings run a suspiciously low amount of pick and roll in general. And that's just what most teams do instead of handoffs. And so I would expect a lot of that. I honestly wouldn't be surprised either if we see a little bit more of like Doug he's obviously been with the Kings for these past couple of years, but like him being in charge wouldn't surprise me. He's talked a lot about his influences, Coachy and Rick Adelman, and he was coached by Pat Riley. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we see some like triangle offense type stuff. Like, it wouldn't surprise, especially with Sabonis, his ability to pass. Obviously, Doug played in a system that is heavily based off of big man passing, like the triangle is. Like, I could definitely see a lot of just a mixture. I think it'll just be more of a mixture of stuff. But that's also kind of going a little bit counter with Scott Perry talking about an identity. I think, a little bit of the Kings' identity for the past couple of years has been the dribble handoffs. And so I don't know. I mean, that you could also argue that might be a symbol of where they're at with Domantas Sabonis too. Like, if you're going to build this offense around a guy who loves handoffs, that probably says you maybe think he's going to be here for at least the rest of this season. If not, obviously he's on a 3 years more left on his contract. That could also symbolize that maybe they are, a little bit more in the Sabonis business than we think.
And also we, just kind of assume that this is going to be run through Domas. Zach LaVine's probably the best offensive player on this team. And they ran some DHO with Vucevic. Like, if you think back to when Mike Brown, when they first got DeRozan, he talked about going back watching Chicago. Oh, they ran more DHO than I realized. This might not be a horrible transition for DeMar, but we saw how that played out a little bit. And I think that Zach falls in a similar category. And I don't know that optimizing Domas and optimizing Zach are how much can they coexist?
We're going to find out. Thank you to Chris Watkins and Brenden Nunes, our Sactown Sports insiders. That was the roundtable. One more hour with you. Thanks, fellas. We will talk to you again soon. When we return, could Darius Garland be the missing piece? Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.
Come check out Capital Casino, Sacramento's #1 poker room with the most variety of